Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is Jondi Whitus. You've seen me before, and you may have already seen my colleague Terry Courier as well. We're doing some recording for the Guild today because we think it's really important not only that our chief group of inquiries and passionate EFT users have this in their archives. And also, it's a really good thing to know what Terry has just put out there for you. So I'm going to ask her a few questions. But first of all, I'm going to say, hey, Terry, I know you a little bit because we've talked a little bit. How about you tell them, in case they don't know you yet, tell them a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jondi. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
So, Terry Courier, I am obviously EFT practitioner. Advanced level, is that the language you use these days? It was level
Advanced
3.
practitioner.
Advanced practitioner. And I'm also a fitness professional, a personal trainer and a health coach. So um, I as a trainer, often found people, my clients wanted to lose weight. They were struggling to lose weight. They would start off with that exercise program and a
Mhm.
nutrition program, and they do great for a little while. And then they just kind of crash and burn. And I saw the struggle. I had my own struggles as well. So I'd see them struggle and I think, what can I do to help them? I got into hypnosis first because I thought that, well, maybe that's a tool they could use, and it was somewhat helpful. And then a few years down that road, I found a lot of hypnotherapists who were using EFT. And so I'm like, oh, let's check this out. And I did, and I tried it on myself, and I was, wow, this is great. And of course, I read this is years ago, 25. I'm reading all Gary Craig's stuff, his all uh, Palace of Possibilities and his DVDs. I'm ordering. I was hooked. I was hooked, and I started to introduce it into my weight loss groups. It was just fabulous. Meanwhile, I was also struggling with my own food issues. I was actually not overweight. I was underweight, and I was much thinner than I knew. I had a certain level of
Mm.
dysmorphia, suffered from what now we understand to be disordered eating. So, disordered eating is um, the difference between disordered eating and an eating disorder is that an eating disorder is far more extreme. Anorexia, bulimia, right? Disordered eating is more about having, well, what I had was I just had all these control issues around food. I was thinking about food all the time. If I wasn't eating, I wasn't thinking about eating, and I spent a lot of time not eating. It was that whole control thing, and I didn't see it for a long time. As a fitness instructor, as a group exercise instructor, it is not uncommon for female fitness instructors and female athletes to be struggling with those type of issues. And when I finally realized, yes,
No, no, go ahead.
oh, okay.
When you
So
finally
when I
realize,
finally realized what was going on, and I got that help from so first of all, I met a doctor who said, "You are too thin. What do you know about anorexia?" And I was like, I'm thinking, I didn't say that to her, but I'm thinking,
right?
I'm a fitness professional. Of course I know all about that. And she says,
Mhm.
but I want you to get your body fat checked, right? Which is body fat checked with calipers that you can usually have done in any gym. I had it done. And I was so low. My body fat was so low. Um, I could have stopped menstruating if I got any thinner. And again, I didn't see it. Those are the issues that I struggled with on an emotional level.
Mhm.
Um, but the other thing that I found as I moved through this journey was that I was trying to adhere to a low-fat diet. That was recommended by the USDA and the AMA, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And because I was eating a diet so high in carbohydrates, so low in fat and protein, I was hungry a lot of the time. My food cravings were huge. And then I felt terrible, like, what's wrong with me that I can't control my eating? What is this about? So there was
Mhm.
that whole. So I'm learning, alongside of learning EFT, I'm also learning more about nutrition.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm checking things out for myself. What happens if I eat this way instead of that way? Because I read the science, right? I've
Right.
learned low fat, but then I actually start to study the science of the lower carb diets, and I was like,
Right.
this makes sense. And when I started to do it myself, it made total sense. So all those stuff happened to me together. It was all together.
I love the fact that you have a personal journey and lots of observations. You did the work as well as the research
Hmm.
and found a way to enhance not only your own life, but your professional life in helping other people. And you came up with this waste management program
Yeah. Hmm.
and put it all in there. So let's briefly describe what waste management is as a
Okay.
program, okay,
Hmm.
and how you're going to put it out there in the world.
Okay. So there's a book. It's coming out mid-April is what I'm should be out
Mhm.
very soon. The website's almost done. I'm so excited. So there are many ways to approach weight loss, and the what I'll so the but and the way that this program is laid out
Mhm.
is one where you first of all look at what you are eating. Actually, let me
Mhm.
step back because first you'll have to look at medical issues. It's very important. If you have a
Yes.
thyroid issue, for instance, which is very common with women, you need to know
Oh,
about that, right? And there's other
right.
things to be aware of. So you move through that and then you look at what you're eating. So in the book, for instance, one approach to use is simply to begin to take out the um, the unhealthy foods and add the healthier ones and use EFT to tap down on those food cravings. That's one way to do it. With my clients, I will almost always talk about nutrition first. And um, because, like I said, a healthy diet with enough fat and protein is going to be important. With that said, if there are medical issues, those have to be taken into consideration. And sometimes your diet has everything to do with what might be going on with you health-wise.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to pump the brakes here and say, ever since those of us who started listening to Gary years ago, one of the chief first EFT questions is, have you seen a medical professional about this?
Uh-huh.
Because
Absolutely.
most of us are not medical
Hmm.
professionals.
Yep.
So this is one way that we not only encourage them to be smart, but also
Hmm.
encourage us to keep in our lane,
Right.
right?
Stay in our lane.
Um,
Absolutely.
and so that I'm so glad that you just brought that up right away. And
Hmm.
so this program that sounds very practical about weight issues,
Hmm.
and it also sounds very comprehensive. I'm just going to say the natural knee-jerk reaction, at least for Americans who buy billions of dollars worth of weight issue kinds of things,
Hmm.
is for me to give you the platform to say, how is the waste management program different?
Hmm. Okay, thank you. So first of all, the emphasis is on eating whole foods, minimizing the processed foods, because processed foods will hijack your hunger and satiety signals like nothing else.
Mhm.
And it'll raise your dopamine levels. It's hard.
Mhm.
It makes losing weight difficult. So moving towards a more whole foods diet. And I think in the
Mhm.
beginning, how much you eat isn't necessarily all that important. It might be
Mhm.
eventually, but eating the correct foods, um, and then watching as you work with the as you create a diet that makes sense for you, you watch for where the resistance is. So this is my
Mhm.
goal um, is to pull sugar out of my diet. You try to do that, but oh wait, I don't want to do that. That's really hard for me. And that's where EFT comes in. What's making this hard? The usual advice is, well, eat fruit instead. Well, please, please, you know, if you want chocolate, you want chocolate. So, and you don't have to so EFT fills in that place where you're struggling emotionally, where it gets difficult. It could be a feeling, it could be a belief. There are so many different reasons for this. It often has to do, of course, with our history, right? Because that's what EFT
Yeah.
is all about. So I like to use EFT and start with symptom tapping, right? Tapping for food
Mhm.
cravings,
Mhm.
tapping
Mhm.
for times of day. Sometimes I'll suggest people tap, okay, I'm going to want to eat at night. So let's step back and um, tap during the day for even though I want to eat at night. I sometimes I'll still
Yeah.
do this when I go out to eat with my sister because I just want to, oh, someone's going to serve me and I don't have to cook. And I'll just tap and say, even though I just want to eat like a pig, blah, 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 whatever the words are, right? And that's what I'll do. And that's helpful. And that's a great
Yeah.
beginning, I
Right.
think. And eventually, I think the goal is to eat in a more mindful manner so that you get in touch with your body. Sometimes you can think of a diet as a kind of training wheels, right? Because sometimes people
Right.
don't know. Although I also will say this, when people come to EFT or any other type of alternative type of therapy to help them with weight loss, they've usually tried everything, every traditional way. They've
Exactly.
often for Weight Watchers, etc. So they often already know about
Sure.
what they're eating and how much they're eating. They have a good feel. But if they don't, you just,
These
and
are
there's ways to get to
wonderful,
that.
wonderful EFT canon questions, right,
Mhm.
right up front. What have you tried?
Yeah, right,
Right?
exactly.
Because we used to have a joke about it. And I still use it when people say,
Mhm.
what brought you to EFT? And I'll go desperation like everybody else,
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
you tried everything else, right?
Exactly.
And so the comprehensive nature of
Hmm.
what you're putting together, because there is such a spectrum, there is such a
Mm.
combination of things at work
Yeah,
that
exactly.
need to be addressed. It's
Hmm.
not one thing, it's
No.
many things.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that you've taken that approach and really
Hmm.
been inclusive and
Hmm.
comprehensive in that. And the idea of the eating disorders and disordered eating, I think
Hmm.
that's so helpful because I bet you most of us have some kind of disordered eating if
Hmm.
we are at all mindful about our weight.
Hmm.
But I do want to say that brought up for me when you said it a moment ago. There's mindful this and mindful that. I want to ask when you say mindful eating, how is that different than simple awareness or nutritional knowledge? Talk to us about that.
So when I think of mindful eating, I think of it in two parts. First of
Mhm.
all, mindfulness of your own hunger. Okay. Actually, let me back up.
Sure.
Being aware of your own desire to eat and stopping long enough to say, is this physical hunger or am I looking for something else? And I think that's the best place to start. And if you know right off that it's not physical hunger, you can work with EFT to start to explore that. If you are hungry and it's time to eat, then eating mindfully is going to help you um, learn to eat that just enough. No more, no less, just enough. And only your body knows it. And we know that, right? All these diets, oh my God, there's so many um, different
Mm,
formulas to tell you. Um, eat, take your weight, multiply it by this, divide it by that. They'll tell you exactly, but that's nonsense. You can get a round figures. They're good to work with, right? But you
right.
can't, um, in the end, your own body will tell you
Yes.
how much you need. And if it isn't telling you that, it's probably because there's, again, emotions, unhelpful beliefs that are in the way. And that's where EFT is such a great place. That's the gift of and the power of
And
EFT has been able to get to those issues.
I agree with that 100%. I've just, you know, most people who know me know that I'm a very big fan of tapping for almost everything.
Yep.
And when you talk about the let your body tell you, a lot of people aren't very friendly with their body. They don't work with their body. They work
Hmm.
against their body or they fight their body. And
Right.
so I'm just guessing that that's very much a part of what you help them untangle,
Yeah. Hmm.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And since we know that this I've got a couple of ways to go with this. One of it is about the idea of whole foods and food list and things like that versus what we call comfort food,
Hmm.
which speaks to
Hmm.
the thing we're trying to feel better about and what we're using to get there.
Right.
And I think that that's part, no doubt, of what you're helping them with is what are your
Hmm.
comfort foods and what are you comforting
Yeah.
when
Hmm.
you try to pour that in, and also the related emotions about the foods I know I'm supposed to eat,
Hmm.
supposed to. That usually brings up some deprivation, some resentment, and
Right.
how does this program work with that?
Well, always with EFT, um, it's totally client led. So,
Mhm.
what might the questions look like? All right, so I made this goal to stop eating sugar 3 days a week, but I couldn't do that. Well, what's that about? What were you feeling? What was going on at the time, right? Some of these
Mhm.
questions we love. What was happening when, or what did that remind you of? Or what were you thinking? You
Mhm.
make those questions. What was happening just before you had that urge? I remember working with this client once, and she said, I don't know. I was just sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden the bag of chips are gone. I said, well, what were you watching? She said, oh, I was watching the news. She says, it was so upsetting.
Right.
And
I,
as soon as I
there
pointed that out,
again,
she said,
what makes you eat the most,
yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
What's happening? I
Yep.
like that.
And for some people, there's just certain foods they're compulsive about. It's usually
Yeah.
sugar or salty, crunchy. One of the, yeah, okay. That whole you can't eat just one. That's a real thing. And I was teaching a group where one woman she said, "Oh my God, if I go into a house and I see a half bag open of cookies, I think, how could they leave a half package open? How can they not eat the whole thing?" And someone
Right.
else in the group said, "Yes, I feel that way about potato chips. How could you have a half a bag and not eat the whole thing?" It's that type of thing. You
Yeah.
can start with EFT, you can start anywhere. Whatever's showing up is where you start.
I really appreciate that. To me, that speaks to Gary's meet them where they are,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Not your program, not your
Exactly.
algorithm, not
Yeah,
your food list even. It's just like,
exactly.
well, where are you?
Yeah, where are
And I'll
you?
find you there and we'll
Yeah,
we'll walk from wherever you are.
exactly. Exactly.
So I really appreciate that. And because of where we are in this day and time around, I think I just saw today that our young people had hit an all-time ridiculous high percentage of obese young people.
Mhm. Mm,
And I went, oh my gosh,
mm.
this couldn't be better timed
Yeah.
that Terry's going to bring this out.
Hmm.
Um, I won't go down that. That's kind of a soapbox of mine, and I know you'll be on the same page anyway. But I
Hmm.
want to say, given all that, we are living in a time of lots of bariatric kinds of surgery
Hmm.
and lots of injection kinds of rapid weight loss. And I don't want to really say anything about either. I want to say, how does your program work with people who have already done that or are doing that? How does
Hmm.
that live together?
So it's interesting. The the GLP um, medications are fairly new,
Mhm,
S- but I believe this is also the case. I know it definitely was with bariatric surgery. People would go on it,
mhm.
they'd lose weight, but oftentimes, even though it was physically uncomfortable for them to eat, they would do it anyways because they
Yeah.
hadn't been able to deal with the emotional issues. And my sense is, again, I don't know enough about these newer drugs to say to you, and I haven't had enough clients with them
Mhm.
to talk a whole lot about that, except that you have a drug that is going to decrease your desire to eat, which is fabulous. We don't know what the long-term issues are, and that's
Mhm.
that's why I won't, it'll never be my idea for a client to do that. But when they say it, I'll say, okay, I can absolutely support you. And what I'm getting is that, well, people will go on these and they will lose weight, but whatever emotional unease was driving them in the first place, that isn't
That's
going
the
away.
word, the drivers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yep, yep.
I love that
Hmm.
because lots of people will say, I'm already doing this, or I
Yep.
already did this, it didn't work, and
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. So we put them right back at a different starting place, but
Yeah,
still same. And so in this way, anybody who's considering taking this program, reading this book, can say, oh, well, there's something here for everybody. It doesn't
yeah,
really matter what you're on or what you did.
no,
Um, this can get you
yeah.
to that place.
I have a chapter in there on stress management. And
Mhm.
again, stress can be, there's the stress in the moment, there's stress that EFT can absolutely address, but there's
Yeah.
also the stress of a lifestyle that doesn't suit, going,
Mhm.
going, 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 not stopping. Um, that also needs to be, so it's not uncommon for me to work with women, middle-aged women raising children, for instance, and they get their kids off to school in the morning and then they go and they go, 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 and they come home, and then there's snacks and there's homework and there's making
Right.
dinner, and there's no time for them. So sometimes my questions will start. Not, I'm gonna ask those questions because if that's the case, just adding another technique like EFT, it's not going to be enough because they also I will ask questions like, where could you find some space in your day? And they
Yeah.
can, you know, and they often, oh yeah, well, I could do this, I could do that, and that can often be very helpful. I just think when we think of stress, sometimes we think of what can we do next, and it's more than that. It's just more.
Well, I think you're fairly pointing it out. It's like not more, less.
Exactly.
But how you define less, I don't
Mhm.
mean, well, I'm leaving my children. It's good. Come on. Being reasonable about it. It's
Yeah.
the more
Yes.
has a certain cost.
hmm Exactly.
And
Exactly.
finding a way to do less and which less
Yeah.
is something that
hmm
tapping is going to be really good in
hmm
helping them
Yep.
find.
Yep.
And I'm also circling around what we talked about just a minute ago, but that kind of emotional eating brings to mind my mood and food, right?
hmm
That's a real good combination, but often we don't think about it as our mood unless we've gone to hangry. Most
hmm
people now understand hangry,
Right.
right?
Right.
But talk just a little bit more about mood and food that you
Okay.
understand as part of your program.
Okay. So, again, if I can go back to this idea of eating, when you're eating a high glycemic
Hmm.
diet, the term used is still used low carb, which is a very unfortunate name because it's so misunderstood. So I'll just use the word high glycemic, and that's a diet high in sugar, high in flour, not enough fruits, vegetables, etc. Um, that will cause your blood sugar levels to spike and then drop. And that is just, and you do a whole lot of that, and that's just going to affect your mood in a really painful way. And the other
Yeah.
thing is this, when you eat a food that's a diet, when you have a diet that's high in highly processed foods, that affects your mental state. You're less mentally clear. You're more at risk for dementia, and different mood disorders. So
Yeah.
it absolutely has a huge effect on, and this is why I love this idea of um, mixing these two aspects of health, the food and the way that affects the body, and the food and the emotional drivers behind it. Doing both of those things at the same time, I think
Yeah.
with that said, I had a client once who said, I'm not talking about food. We had
Mhm.
this discussion before earlier. So I'm not,
Yeah.
I can't. My father, I'm so angry at my dad. He used to say this to me, say that about my weight, about my food. And we didn't talk about nutrition at all. We went right
Right.
into tapping. And what's interesting about that is a couple months down the line, we're having our call and she says, so I lost 3 pounds this week. And I said, how'd you do that? And she says, I don't know. I just didn't feel like eating.
Mhm.
So that was just an approach that worked really well for her. I was
Mhm.
originally thinking at some point I could create one of those, what do they call it? Evergreen. Oh, there's a name for it, but create a program that people could purchase,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
do this with EFT, do this with hypnosis, da, 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 da. But there isn't just one way to do this. There isn't
Thank you.
just one way.
I
Yeah.
think
hmm
that's so honest.
hmm
And I like that. Um, I also like that you put in the work and done the research and you have a lot of information about this because one more thing I wanted to bring up was when there is menopause onset, it's been my observation in this country that we really do not support this a lot. We don't have a lot of information about it. We're even ashamed of
hmm
the whole subject. I remember back when I used to follow her, Christiane Northrup had written a book, and the title was Menopause. And I have to tell you, people would run when they just saw me with it. I mean, it's just like it could have said porn on the title, and people would have.
Oh my
And and I just thought that's where we are. We
God.
don't seriously have a lot of information about it. We seriously don't have a lot of support for it.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
remember when I had sudden early onset, I now see that I hit it like a Ferrari in a brick wall. And
Mm,
just boom. And
yeah.
nobody believed me. Oh,
Hmm.
you're too young. Da, 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 da. So there was a lot of discounting, a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
disrespect, but it had a lot to do with thyroidism and menopause
Hmm.
and this and that and the
She just.
other. And so your comprehensive approach
Hmm.
can really speak to a group of underserved females,
Hmm.
which are the
Hmm.
majority of the country and the
Yeah.
world are
Yeah.
females.
Absolutely.
So I love that you can give them this kind of support. What
Hmm.
would you say to someone as part of the changes we call menopause and how they can become informed, better informed,
Hmm.
as well as
Hmm.
better supported with this?
Yeah, right. So I would say if you're middle-aged and you're struggling, it isn't, it's not a willpower thing. There's things that are happening hormonally that make weight fluctuate, and it's really challenging. So
Mhm.
that's what the body does. And um, I would tapping to ease those symptoms to maybe decrease the intensity of them is an absolute
Mhm.
possibility. But it's also important to know. Again, this is what the body does. And like you said, women, we just don't get a whole lot of support for that. None at all. By the way, there's a Facebook, there's a woman on Facebook and this is for women premenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and we're here to tell you that we just don't care anymore. And she goes through all these things like get off my yeah.
Yeah.
So um so I would say that you could use it. It's normal, it's challenging, and EFT can absolutely help with that, with for like I said, the symptoms themselves, the understanding that they're normal. When I
Mhm.
was younger, I would teach an exercise class and then I'd run a weight loss group after. And when I was in menopause, I would take off my jacket, put it back on. I'd go through these sweats
Mhm.
things and thank God it was all women. Take it
I,
off, put it on. Yeah, it's
I,
just
I call that Mr. Rogers on steroids.
yeah, I know. And it would just be great if we could just treat it for what it is. And
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah.
Well, I would like you to tell people again a couple things. One, the name of the book, when it's coming out. Two, how to get in contact with you if they would like to talk more or experience the program you offer.
Thank you. So the book is Waste Management, WAIST, Waste Management, Train Body, Heart, and Mind for Permanent Weight Loss. The website is, and it should be up in the week, actually. So excited. TLC Weight Loss Coach. And that's that one. I have another one for fitness, but that, and by the way, that's just terryelcarrier.com. That's for fitness. And I'll just put a little, because when I work with, I only work with older adults these days. So it's TLC Active Aging, actually, is that website. So, um, but the TLC Weight Loss Coach will come up. The book comes up mid-April to May. Um, and it just puts together everything that I've said. I tried to get everything in that book that I could. Um, and yes, I'm pretty excited about that. So
Well,
thank you.
good. And
Yeah.
and I can see what I want to say thank you for taking the time to do this interview. And I want to say it's more like a discussion, which I
Hmm.
prefer. I think I
Yep.
probably get a lot more out of it than interviews. And just thankful for you
Oh,
in the world and know that you're going to help and serve a lot of people.
oh,
So
thank you
I look
so.
forward to talking to you again soon. And
Okay.
I want to encourage everybody who finds this useful to pass it on to somebody
Okay.
who could really use it.
All right. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye-bye. Thank you.